We got Tracy. My mother could do that. She would go out on the back porch and whistle, and anywhere in the neighborhood, it was like I would hear, "Rowdy, it's time for you to go home." Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Has everybody claimed a chair?
Order baked beans, and I forgot to get them.
It's good to see everybody. We have a lot of people.
I'll just hang on to it for
I did not, but I'm okay.
I'll give you this one and then I'll give another.
Well, thank you.
So we're continuing our study on the book Faithfully Different on Natasha Green. We're in chapter 6. And today's topic is re-examining belief when confronted with doubt. Deconversions are people that walk away from the faith. Atheism and agnosticism are only one part of the secular narrative that glorifies doubt about the historic Christian faith. A worldview that is rooted in the authority of self rather than a worldview rooted in the authority of the Bible. So I'm going to ask you a question here. Probably no one's going to want to again, so I'm not going to ask for. I want you to ask yourself: have you ever had doubts about the authority of the Bible? Morning. Have you ever been in an instance where, okay, I accept this as authority, but I have no clue. I just can't make sense of it. It's just like, and if that has happened to you, which I'm sure it has, it happens to all of us. That doubt can really fester and be, that doubt can be fueled very easily. And if you want to fuel that doubt, there are lots of resources for you to be able to fuel that doubt. There are. And with the internet, what a great thing to have all that knowledge at our fingertips. But there are all kinds of podcasts, books, websites dedicated to publicly cultivating doubts about a biblical worldview. So if you want to argue against the Bible, there's plenty out there to support that argument. No reason you can't go it. And it is in the, millions of people are viewing those and reading those.
All you have to do is read the comment section of the social media posts.
Yeah. Everybody's got an opinion. Yeah, everybody's got an opinion. And, opinions are like noses. Everybody's got one, and you can see the flaw in everybody else's except yours. The author, she said that she narrowed it down. Again, we're talking in generalities, which I do not like, but that's pretty much where we are. She says there are 3 catalysts. Now, a catalyst is something that makes something happen. For those of you that paid attention in chemistry, which I didn't a whole lot, but I do know what a catalyst is. It makes a chemical reaction happen. I was more interested in Joanne, who sat next to me. those three quick. Number one, intellectual. And we've talked about this. You know, an intellectual looks at science and evolution and the reliability of the Bible and the evidence of the resurrection, and they say, well, I mean, scientifically, and with evolution, and if you read how we got the Bible, and when you're dead, that whole concept. Well, and that intellectually, they just can't come to grips with what is in the Bible. I'm not pointing to the Bible. What is in the Bible? They just can't come to grips with it intellectually. So they discount. And then they look for ways to validate the discount. Number two, an emotional catalyst. Now this, I would dare say, when I think about 40 years ago as opposed to today, a lot of the doubts of Christianity have become emotional catalysts. That people see the church as a social club that basically has rules to follow, and if you don't follow the rules, you just don't fit in. Okay? If you don't think like the collective, you don't act like the collective, well then, you just don't fit into the collective, and thus, you know, it's like, then I can easily discount what's here. Then there is, and this is, you know, in the past 40 years, I think the intellectual indignation, the catalyst has grown, and with the internet, it continues to grow. But then there is the moral indignation catalyst, which is, I think, one of the things today that is growing. And it basically says that the Bible's sense of morality is inferior to my sense of moral reality. In other words, if I feel like my moral compass is better, is superior to the Bible, I'm going to go with my moral compass. Okay? I believe it's okay too. The Bible says no, but I'm going to, you know, morally, I feel that my feelings are superior to what the Bible says. And that kind of comes when the Bible doesn't make sense to you. You read it and think, why would God do that? Why would a God, you know, and that's, why would God create what he created? When we look out here, we can see all kinds of reasons to smile. Okay? But spend enough time with enough people, you're going to find a lot of reasons to not smile. And why would God create such a mess? Okay? It just, I have heard it. God had a chance to create anything. And the fact that he created, he settled for this, I mean, that just doesn't make sense. So those are the three catalysts. You know, whether it be intellectually, emotional, or moral. I think we've seen it all. Those aren't, those are, we didn't invent it in the last 10 years. Those have been around for a long time. Any thoughts?
Well, you hear regularly, you know, when a child dies or whatever, you know, where is
We need to understand, and that's where we must come to grips with it. You know, if you look at all of those that have basically pushed the Bible aside, for those who have read and have, you know, there are those who just ignored it. But for those that have, and the term is used, is deconverted people who were Christians and no longer are. They see just how unreasonable the Bible can be. Okay?
Probably what I heard about is outdated.
Outdated, yes.
We've become superior human beings that we've passed.
We've outgrown it.
We've outgrown.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't mean a lot.
Yeah, we're smarter.
We can send people to the room, so we're smart.
Yeah.
But how do they go from the Bible and then turn to the Quran? I mean,
If you figure that out, write a book.
yeah,
You know?
because it boggles my mind. I see on Facebook and TikTok, and they're like, "Oh, I used to be Christian, now I read the Quran." And I'm like, "How did like you go from one?" End? I'm like, I don't understand it.
Yeah. And frankly, because we don't understand it, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, we still need to address it. Okay, what is so attractive to Islam, of Islam? You know, what is so attractive? And that's something, folks, we really need. I mean, I think sometimes in this, I'm going off on a little sermon here. Sometimes I think in our brotherhood, we feel that the enemy is the Baptists and the Catholics and the Methodists. Folks, our biggest threat is Islam. Okay? And if you want to discuss that a whole lot more with me, I'll be happy to. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But that's our biggest threat. So those that push this aside see how unreasonable it is to read the Bible. They also see how hurtful the church or Christians have been. Okay? The Crusades. You know, through the years, those of you that have studied the history, a lot of nasty stuff has been done in the name of Christianity. And if you read the Old Testament and try to and look at it at a pure lens, it's pretty funny. Okay? And again, all kinds of stories that when questioned, we need to come to grips with. And be able to at least acknowledge and argue for a different, on a very solid basis. Sir?
One thing you should add is imperialism.
Imperialism.
When the Bible ship pulled in Japan, missionaries went with them and said, "You're going to become Christians." And when they went into Africa, the missionaries came with rifles and they said, "You're going to become Christians."
God has standards. God has expectations of us. Okay? That some people find, again, this is a very today word, is oppressive. It holds me back. You know, why would God create me like this and then expect me to suppress who I am? Okay? Those are the real arguments that we need to come to grips with. Okay? If we are going to save the world, which we're not going to save the world, but if we want to save those that don't, that look at this as something that has no authority, we have to come to grips with those conditions and meet them where they are. So when we talk about the catalyst, we also talk about tough questions. Have you ever had anyone come to you with a tough religious Christian question? And I know I have. And you kind of stumble over the answer. You get hit a little blindsided. And that, again, that's natural. We have to come to where how we handle those, and as a consultant, when I was out on the road, I call them curveballs. And on my desk, I have a baseball. Because I'm always looking for the umpires and the curveballs. Because, you know, businesses run a lot the same, but there's always something unique about them that we've got to handle. And those are the curveballs. And for us, you know, it's easy. I'm going to say it's easy to preach the gospel because do you find it somewhat easy?
I enjoy it. So
Exactly. And I say that because you make it look easy.
Yeah.
Okay? And you enjoy it. Okay? And it's easy to sit down and study. I'm not discounting what you do. And put together, 25 minutes of information to share. 25 minutes of information to share, let it flow, and then go home. But boy, when somebody confronts you with those tough questions, can we handle that? And a lot of people who have walked away from the faith have had tough questions that, one, didn't seem to be welcomed. And number two, the answers that were given were shallow or unsatisfactory. You start questioning your faith, and then you ask for help. We have to be able to do that. We have to be able to take the tough questions from those who are struggling in their faith. Take the tough questions and give good answers. God be able to hit a curveball. We have. And I'm sure you've had some curveballs, but they're not fun. So, wrap up the first segment here, first half. Doubt is normal, and it's okay. When people come to us, when we have doubts, it's okay. When people come to us with doubt, it's okay. And, again, not like you said, it's all about how we react. When someone comes to you with a hard question, we need to react. And we need to react the right way. And when someone, you can see you're not giving them the satisfactory answer, we've got to react. We have to be able to react so that we can communicate. Now, a lot of people believe that faith and doubt are opposites. They're not. Just because I have doubt doesn't mean I've lost my faith. They're not opposite. See, faith is trust. Hebrews 11:1 say? What does it define faith as?
Assurance and conviction.
That's right. Now, faith is the, I got it written down. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So, the point the author made is that biblical hope, first thing we have to make sure we communicate, is biblical hope is not based on fantasy. There are, we have a good reason for what we believe. We should feel good about what we believe. There's good reason. It's not blind obedience. What we do is not blind obedience, and it shouldn't be blind obedience. And what we offer to people and what we expect from people should not be blind obedience. That doesn't mean we'll understand, we will, understand everything. But there is a good reason for our belief, our assurance, and our convictions. You can be confident in that. And that goes back to that, like you said, assurance and conviction.
And it doesn't change, unlike science and social norms and all, it doesn't change.
Right, that's right. You think about the laws of physics. Okay, Newton came up with the law of physics a couple hundred years ago. Those laws have not changed. How we apply it and all going through and how we use those laws to understand things, yeah, that will evolve with what we learn. But those laws of physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That law's not going to change. It's not going to change. It hadn't changed in 500 years, and it's not going to change for 500 years. Same way with this. It hasn't changed in 500 years, and it's not going to change in 500 years. We're going to quickly, I'm going to read some verses. Matthew 22:37. And these, my guesses are all, they're all familiar. Matthew 22:37. And he said to him, you shall love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Okay? He didn't say, in all of your blind obedience. No. You love God with your mind, which means it makes sense for me to just do this. I should be able to make sense of it and feel good about it, assured, and convicted. 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I used to speak as a child, think as a child, reason as a child. When I became a man, I did away with the childish things. The biggest surprise I had as a parent was I couldn't reason with a 4-year-old. Okay? And for Anna, I wish she was here, it went well into the teen years. Okay? What's that?
20, 30.
Yeah, well, we're still working. It's a working. Okay? Go over to 1 Corinthians 14:20. But I still will work. 14:20. Brethren, do not be children in your thinking, yet in evil beliefs, but in your thinking be mature. Think. Reason. You don't have to throw reason aside to look at the Bible as assurance. And lastly, 1 Peter 3:15. sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Big one. Okay, this, if you want a verse for your bathroom mirror, this is a good one. Okay? A lot of rabbit holes there with the video. We don't have time. So, last 16 minutes, how do we deal with it? How do we do it? We've all agreed, I think everybody, nobody's argued with me that we need to. So how do we do it? Let's get some practical application. So, in 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about 10, and you've got to go back to that. That's such a
Cardinal visual.
it's such a visual. So we got 10 things that, as far as dealing with doubt. 1, be honest with yourself about the nature of truth. Why do I believe this? Why do I want to believe this? Well, as a young person, because if I didn't, I would disappoint my family. Okay? And really, when you're young, that's okay, because you're being molded. But we need to come to grips with and be honest with ourselves. Why do we believe this? Why is this even a big deal? And we need to be able to come to grips with that inside our mind. Because once we come to grips with it, then we can share it and communicate it. Because I tell you, those guys in the first century, they had come to grips with what they were doing. Enough that they were, they would question their life or give their life for it. Those guys were assured. We need to be assured too. And again, all of us, it could be a different reason, but we need to come to grips with why this is important to me. Number 2, remember that truth has no fear. Get the bulletin. There's some articles on fear in there. I used to tell the people that work for me, don't ever be afraid of the truth. If we've messed up, if something has happened, don't ever be afraid to come to me and tell me the truth. Don't ever be afraid of the truth. And don't ever, because fear is the big, that's the big hurdle. Let's face it, that's all the media has these days is fear. That's all they got. That's all the politicians have. That's the only card they have to play, is fear. And I just look at it and I shake my head. I'm shaking. But remember, when it comes to the truth, we don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid to dive into it. Number 3, search your doubt and find its root. In other words, what is causing my doubt at the time? Is it a conversation I've had with someone? Is it something that's going on inside of my life? Is it whatever that is? That when you have doubt, something probably caused it. An event. There was a trigger that for those who have lost their faith. And if you have those, find what that trigger is. Whether it be that this baby said earlier, the death of a child, something traumatic. Usually it's trauma that causes us to doubt. Find what that is. Number 4. The definition of a fanatic, someone who lost sight of their goal, they doubled their effort. The true test for Christianity, and the ultimate truth, the author says this, and I would tend to agree with him. The ultimate truth is that Jesus rose from the dead. Okay? Because if he didn't rise, if he didn't rise from the dead, the rest of it pretty much is not worth it. It just doesn't matter. But the fact that he died, was buried, they all had purpose, it was all significant. But that resurrection, that truth is what everything else hinges on. So, and maybe we don't talk enough about it. I know for me, I've studied a lot of things, and that one particular, I just take it for granted, which means if someone challenged me on it, it's a curveball. That's the one thing I learned this week, is I need to be able to make a defense for that, because I just take it for granted. Number 5, make sure the things that you doubt are really what the Bible teaches, and not just some popular mischaracterization. One of the things we have not done well in the last, I would say 30 years, is we have allowed the world to define who we are. And their definition has not been kind. We need to say, no, that's not who we are. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is why we do what we do. We need to be better at that. And you know, that's why you're successful, is you're good at communicating that. And you feel, when I watch you communicate, I can tell, you believe it. You're just not making us kill 30 minutes. Okay? You know, and that's something that's a gift to be able to do that. You have to argue.
One of the things that makes that difficult to do is that sometimes we have to separate ourselves from Christianity.
Yeah. Sometimes we've got to realize that, you know, what we're concerned about, what we're worried about, what we're concentrating on, we really don't amount to billions. You know, and I do that. People that I train to make a change, you know, they worry about something, and I tell them, after 3 days, you're going to be fine. You know, if we're going to a whole new system, they're worried about this, and I'll tell them, trust me, after 3 days, it's going to be okay. Oh, I just think it's going to be a problem. And so we've got to sometimes trust those around us, and we might be worried about things. Or the term I heard recently was, we're fighting monsters that don't exist. Okay. This next point, separate, goes along with what you're talking about. Separate problems with the church or Christians with that of Christianity. You read that again. Separate problems with the church or Christians with that of Christianity. How many times have you had someone come to you and say, so-and-so said something I didn't like, or so-and-so insulted me, or so-and-so ignored me, and that fueled their doubt. Or maybe it's fueled our doubt. Because somebody either stepped on my toes or didn't. You know? So be sure that we don't let Christians get in the way of our Christianity. We're humans, just people. You know, we're all different, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we all bring different baggage to the table. So if someone dump some baggage on you. Don't mischaracterize Christianity with that baggage. This is a big one. Be willing to put in the work to resolve your questions. Now, as I've said, this is not an easy book. Okay? And the further we get away from when it was written, the harder it's going to get. It's not, but you're going to have to put some work. If you've got some doubts, you're not going to just magically, and nobody's going to just magically gain that knowledge. Don't be afraid. If something is fueling that doubt, put in the work. Study. I will tell you, one of the things that really, in the past couple months, has really impressed me, and it's a good thing, is I've had 3 or 4 people call me and say, I'm struggling with this. It's not making sense in the Bible. Help me. And that was the greatest compliment that and I don't know if you get that, but there are times when you are approachable, so I would think people could come to you and say, help me with this. And that's pretty, that tells me people are putting in the work to try to understand what's fueling maybe some doubt or some confusion. Purposefully expose yourself to faith challenges. If people are saying this, get out in front of them. Because eventually it may come around to you. If you think this question or this doubt is going to come to you, get out in front of them. Just like I was saying with the resurrection, dawned on me this week. I need to learn more about it. So I gotta get out in front of it to be able to argue the point if it comes to be. The other thing, number 9, explicitly identify your alternative to Christianity. Okay. So if not this, what? So if I don't believe in this, if I don't use this as an authority, what am I going to stand for? And if you look at the alternatives, sometimes they're not really worth their weight. And lastly, pray and read your Bible. We say it all the time, but it really has merit. If you're struggling with something, don't be afraid to ask God. And don't be afraid to read it. And it's a continual process. It's not like one semester and I got it down. I wish it would have done. Wouldn't it be nice if it were that easy? So to wrap up, if Christianity is true, the solution for doubt isn't to bury it in fear or worry about what you might find. You need to investigate it and question more deeply. I sometimes wish that God had made it simple. You know what? It's not how He designed it. Okay? I would love to tell you that life, the Christian life, is a piece of cake.
Well, Adam and Eve had one thing.
That's right.
That was pretty simple.
That's right. We only had one thing, and it opened Pandora's box, hence here's where we are. Okay. So that kind of wraps up this last section in faithfully different believing. The next 3 weeks, we're going to talk first